unless this gauge is totally point, we're running like, Jesus, 75 PSI of fuel pressure. That's way more than we need. And it ran, and we just kind of had to leave it alone at the race because I didn't have any way to, well, number one, I didn't have time or what I needed to fix it. And I wasn't sure what was causing it. There's a new fuel pump in there. So the fuel pump is strong. It's obviously doing its job. But either that gauge is bad or the regulator is not doing its job. And I did buy this used. So what we're going to do, we're going to take this all apart, check it, make sure it's doing what it's supposed to do internally, and then go from there. They do make a rebuild kit for these. We get a new diaphragm inside. But we'll see what we got. I was hoping that changing this back to PWM control, the pulse width modulation, basically letting the ECU control the fuel pressure again, I was hoping that would fix it, but it did not. So previously we just had an on-off switch, a relay, and a fuse controlling the fuel pump. I switched it back to let the computer control fuel pressure, but alas, that hasn't made any difference. So now we're going to take things apart and see what we got. And here is your real-life exploded view of an Aeromotive fuel pressure regulator. This is the A1000-6, I believe. So you've got a supply, and then you've got a return and a outlet for your rail, fuel rail. So basically in, out, out. Okay, this port on the front is for the gauge. Okay, and then inside, so these are a stupid simple design. Basically, that's your chamber in there. The diaphragm, okay, sets on top of that and basically seals that off from the top half of the clamshell. Spring sits on top of that. This sits on top of the spring, okay, and sets up inside there. Now that hole is where this guy comes in. So you'll have your washer on top. This goes inside, threads in, and that is what adjusts your pressure. So it puts pressure on this guy here, which then puts pressure on the spring and gives you preload, and that is where your fuel pressure adjustments come from. Now this also has a vacuum reference port or boost reference port on the side here. So you can hook up a little nipple there and run a vacuum line to your intake manifold, and that will help adjust fuel pressure as vacuum increases and decreases. Likewise, and that's a 1-to-1 ratio. Likewise, if you're running boost, you use that as your boost reference point. So as boost increases, decreases, what have you, that will adjust your fuel pressure. Or you can just plug it off with this guy if you don't need to worry about that. So, common issues I've read. Diaphragm goes bad, okay? This thing seems very flexible still. I haven't seen any rips or tears, anything like that in it. It doesn't seem brittle at all. This little ball bearing guy, that is what sits down right there. So that chamfer still looks good. It doesn't look jagged, doesn't look torn up, anything like that. Spring, rusty, whatever. So keep in mind, this seals off the bottom of the bowl here. Okay, this is where all the fuel is in here. On top of this, there's no fuel. It's just an open air chamber in here, basically. So the spring gets rusty, whatever. The other thing that you will see sometimes is with this guy, well, actually not this guy. This is the one that comes with the fuel pressure regulator. But if you add a nipple here, it can sometimes stick out. Come on. It can stick out on the inside and get caught on the spring. And so when you try to adjust up here and put preload on the spring, it can't put extra pressure on the diaphragm because this guy, or whatever you have coming through there, sticks through the body, catches on the spring, and then the spring can't move up and down from that point. So above that, you would have extra spring pressure, but below that, it'd be the same all the time. Yeah, and then other things, obviously, your gauge could be total crap. But I took this and I got my air compressor down to about 80 psi and put the old rubber nipple on there and tested her out, and it gauged exactly as the gauge on my air compressor. Probably not the most scientific accurate method, but it definitely would move the dial up and down as I increase and decrease air pressure, and it would come right up to what the gauge on the air compressor says. So I don't think it's the gauge. So in this case, I don't think it's this either, because this doesn't even, it's not even long enough to get through the entire body of the fuel pressure regulator. It was about 2/3 of the way through. So that's not it. Honestly, the only thing left is either somehow this diaphragm is bad, or the internals just need a good cleaning, or my fuel pump is overrunning the fuel pressure regulator. I guess that could be a possibility. Like I said, it's a new fuel pump. I will have to look up the specs on the pump. I don't think it is, though. It's not a really big pump. I mean, I bought basically a glorified stock pump from Deutschwerks. So I'll check that just to be sure, but I don't think that's the case. So at this point, what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna kind of scrub everything out, give it a good cleaning, okay? Put it all back together. I'm gonna leave the vacuum port open, because as far as getting your base fuel pressure set, you're supposed to have this open when you do it. So I'll clean it out, put it all back together, leave the vacuum port open, put it back on, and see if that makes a difference or not. And we will see what happens with that. Okay, got it all back together. I think I misspoke before. I looked in the instructions again, and the bottom one here is your return, okay? These two are your in and out. It doesn't matter which one is which. In my case, this is my supply side, my inlet side from the fuel pump, and this is the side going to the fuel rail, and then the return is here. The gauge, you do need to put some sort of sealant on there. I like to use thread sealant personally. And then this, the vacuum port, okay? Reading the instructions, it says, if you are not gonna hook up the vacuum line, to leave this open to atmosphere. So that has me wondering if that was part of my problem, because there was this plug in there. So we're gonna see what happens with that. And then to set your initial fuel pressure, you leave this turned all the way open, which it is, okay? Because you could take this out and just do it like that too. But I had it just threaded in, so it was just touching that plate inside there, okay? So now we're gonna hook it back up to the car and see if we can get this thing to adjust properly. All right, well, fortunately, we have like no change. So fuel pressure still around 75. Show you here. So I can increase it, but I can't lower it. So if you watch this as I start dialing down on that set screw, the pressure will go up, but the lowest I can get it to go is about 75. And I started with that set screw all the way out. I'll pull it back out again so you can see. So, yeah, there. Set screw is out. And as low as it will go. And I also have that vacuum port open to atmosphere. So, at this point, I think I'm going to give a little call to Aeromotive, see if they have any suggestions. I'm going to guess they're going to tell me to buy the rebuild kit with the new diaphragm. Beyond that, I don't know. Well, that's right. I got to check the fuel pressure on that Deutschwerks pump. Hang on a sec. Well, I just got off the phone with Aeromotive, and basically we ran through the setup. Everything sounded good. The only thing he had a question of was, and this is what he thought might be causing it, is the fitting right here. He said basically if you can't adjust pressure down, it is most often than not a restriction in the return line. So we have taken the return line off the pump head, okay, and I'm running it into a bucket, and I started the car, and holy hell, there was plenty of pressure there. There's plenty of fluid coming out, and the regulator was down at like 40 psi, right where it's supposed to be, with no pressure on the set screw. So that tells me I have a restriction at that fitting or inside the pump body. So I'm just going to show you guys here quick so you can see too. Start her up quick. And I grabbed the wrong damn. Well, anyway, you can see she's down. She's down about 35 psi, and it's barely enough fuel for it to run now. You can hear that. And look at how fast that's coming out of there. Oh shit. Okay. So yeah, that the issue appears to be either that fitting or something inside the pump body that I'm going to have to figure out and resolve. As you could see, she was spewing out plenty of fluid. So everything is doing its job until it gets back here. Time to dig in further. Pump assembly out. All right. I have my suspicions as to whether or not it's the fitting, because both the supply and the return are 3/8 fittings, and they both got -6 adapters here. Clearly no restrictions there or there. If I can push 70 plus psi through that opening, this side shouldn't have any problems receiving that back in. So I took my little air gun here, and this thing makes funny noises when I put a little pressure into it, like the air has nowhere to go. So that air, i.e. that fuel, is like going in there and it's got nowhere to go. So I don't know if that's something in here. I would assume it's something in here. Whatever this goes into, I'm guessing is preventing the fuel from dumping in there. So I'm thinking if I just detach this, get rid of that hose there, and let it just free flow dump right into the bucket, I don't see why that wouldn't work. I'm gonna do a little more research first, just so you know I don't blow myself up or anything, but yeah, I don't see why that wouldn't work. So I don't know what that's going into. All right, we finally got it. So you can see we're sitting about maybe 48, 49 psi, somewhere in that range. Just idling right now, and it does rise a bit with you know, when you step on the pedal. All it boiled down to was in the fuel pump assembly, that return hose went down to a deal. It was this thing. It was a built-in fuel pressure regulator in the fuel pump assembly. So that is what was causing the restriction. Once I remove that, everything's happy and it works like it's supposed to. So I think I am going to see if I can find a nipple, just so I can give it the so I can use the vacuum on the side there. And but other than that, I think we're pretty set. So I'll play with this a little more, but overall I am much happier now, and it's working the way it's supposed to. So things were learned.